More than 2,500 years ago, this was the most powerful warship in the Mediterranean. At first glance, it looked almost too simple. No engine, no cannons, no heavy armor. Just a narrow wooden hull, a bronze ram, and 170 men rowing in perfect rhythm. Yet that was exactly what made it so dangerous. With 3 stacked tiers of oars and a hull built for speed, it could accelerate explosively and move with razor-sharp agility, fast enough to outmaneuver almost anything else on the water. And with the bronze ram at the bow, all of that momentum could be turned into a single devastating strike. This was the trireme, and for centuries, it dominated naval warfare across the ancient Mediterranean. In collaboration with Boris Rankov, Emeritus Professor of Ancient History at Royal Holloway, University of London, we rebuilt the entire ship in 3D to reveal how it worked, why its design was so effective, and how it was used in battle. My name is Ben, and this is Deconstructed. Beginning in the 8th century BC, the Archaic period saw powerful civilizations rise across the Mediterranean. Among the major naval powers were the Greeks, Phoenicians, and later, the Carthaginians. As states competed for resources, territory, and influence, control of the sea became increasingly important. And at the center of this struggle for the sea was one type of vessel, the galley. Long, narrow, and powered primarily by oars rather than sails, the galley dominated ancient Mediterranean warfare because it could move quickly and accurately regardless of wind conditions. Ancient galleys were named according to the number of oars, the number of tiers of oars, or the number of rows of rowers. One important early type was the pentaconter, an all-purpose vessel used for commerce, piracy, and naval combat. Its name came from the Greek word pentekonta, meaning 50, a reference to its 50 oars, arranged in a single tier with 25 on each side of the vessel and operated by 1 man per oar. By the mid-6th century BC, the pentaconter could be fitted with a bronze ram mounted at the bow, turning the ship itself into a weapon capable of striking and damaging enemy vessels in battle. From the late 8th century BC, another innovation appeared: ships with 2 superimposed tiers of oars. This 2-tier design increased rowing power without significantly increasing the ship's length. These 2-tier ships, in turn, evolved around the 6th century BC into the vessel that would define ancient naval warfare, the trireme. Its name refers to its 3 superimposed tiers of 1-man oars on each side of the vessel, and from the 6th to the 4th centuries BC, it became the primary warship in the Mediterranean. Thanks to a convergence of surviving evidence, the trireme is the most thoroughly documented warship of the ancient Mediterranean world. It also played a decisive role in some of antiquity's most important naval battles, most notably the Battle of Salamis in 480 BC, where the Greeks turned back the Persian invasion. Working with Boris Rankov, Emeritus Professor of Ancient History at Royal Holloway, University of London, and using Olympias, a modern full-scale reconstruction of a trireme as a reference, we modeled the entire ship in 3D. This allows us to offer the closest glimpse yet into what a 4th century BC Athenian trireme looked like, how it functioned, and how this extraordinary warship navigated the waters of the Mediterranean and operated in battle. Speaking of navigation, we had to navigate through quite a bit of data to create this reconstruction, including hundreds of references, articles, and research notes. That is why this episode is sponsored by Opera. When we were putting this reconstruction together, we had research spread across dozens of pages. With Opera's tab islands, we could group everything by topic and then name each tab island, and even use color coding to organize. For example, we kept ship plans in one island, reference images in another, and a reference document in another. Then we could collapse and expand each group when we needed it, instead of getting lost in a wall of tabs. Split screen was also really useful. Opera now supports up to 4 tabs in split screen, so when we needed to compare reference images and ship plans, we could keep them visible at the same time and resize the layout as we worked. Opera has also upgraded its built-in AI, making it faster, smarter, and more powerful. Because Opera AI can understand the context of the page you're working on, if you allow it, you can ask questions about a Wikipedia page or summarize research documents without opening extra tabs, installing extensions, or even creating an account. And for day-to-day workflow, the sidebar is a huge help. Opera's customizable sidebar lets you keep services like Gmail, Google Calendar, or Google Translate just one click away. So checking a production schedule, translating a source, or jumping into email does not have to interrupt the work. Whether you're reconstructing an ancient warship or just trying to keep your own work organized, Opera helps keep everything easier to navigate. Try it for yourself using the link in the description and pinned comment below. The trireme likely pushed the technological limits of the ancient world, with every part of its design optimized for speed and maneuverability. Armed with a heavy bronze ram, it could breach enemy hulls or smash through their oars, while also carrying a small contingent of Marines for boarding actions. In terms of size, the ship was about 37 meters long, roughly the same length as 3 city buses. It had a beam of 5.4 meters and displaced around 47 metric tons when fully manned. Its total crew was made up of 200 men. Of these, 170 were oarsmen, with 1 man assigned to each oar. Contrary to popular belief, the majority of these rowers were free citizens or hired professionals rather than slaves. The crew also included 5 officers, including the commanding officer, a musician who coordinated the oarsmen, 10 sailors responsible for handling the sails, and 14 Marines who defended the ship, consisting of 10 spearmen and 4 archers. The trireme was built around its 3 tiers of oars with an open deck above. We'll explore each part of the vessel in detail, starting at the sails and working our way downward, ending with one component so essential that the ship could not have gone to sea without it. Rising above the hull were 2 masts, the taller mainmast at midships and a smaller forward-raked foremast near the bow. Each mast was stabilized lengthwise by ropes called stays, and each was stepped into a mast step structure within the hull. Both masts carried horizontal spars known as yards, which supported square sails. The mainmast carried the larger sail, while the foremast carried a smaller foresail. Ancient Mediterranean warships primarily used square-rigged sails, likely made of linen. These were most effective with favorable winds, rather than when sailing close to the wind. The foresail may have improved steering balance and maneuverability, particularly during coastal navigation. A series of ropes known as brails passed over the yards and down the face of the sails. By hauling on these lines, the crew could shape and furl the square sails. Other ropes attached to the lower corners of the sail, called tacks and sheets, were used to control how the sail caught the wind. But these sails were used primarily during transit. The masts and yards were designed to be removable, and before naval combat, they were taken down and put ashore. This allowed for easier movement on board, reduced wind resistance, improved maneuverability, and helped prevent damage during battle. Below the sails was the hull itself. The wooden hull was long and narrow, with a low freeboard and a relatively shallow draft. At the waterline, projecting forward from the bow, was the ship's main weapon, the ram. This was a hollow bronze casting that extended roughly 2 meters from the bow and weighed about 200 kilograms. It was designed to fit precisely around a heavy timber structure integrated into the bow. Its blunt ramming face, with 3 horizontal fin-like blades, was designed to split open the seams of an enemy ship's hull, while dispersing the force of impact to prevent the ram from twisting, bending, or becoming lodged. But the ram was only part of the equation. To use it effectively, the entire ship had to be handled with great speed, timing, and precision, something that becomes even clearer once we see how triremes were actually used in battle. On both sides of the bow were painted marble eyes. Painted eyes were common on Greek warships and merchant vessels and were believed to provide divine protection and allow the ship to see and navigate safely across the sea. Above the ram, a tall timber extension known as an acrostolian curved upward from the bow and projected above the ship, serving a primarily decorative role. At the opposite end, the stern of a trireme ended with the aflaston, an ornamental upward curving extension that projected above the ship. It was typically shaped like a fan or a bird's tail feathers and decorated with carved ornaments. Ancient galleys did not usually have names written on the hull like modern ships. Instead, painted or sculpted devices representing the name were attached to the bow decoration and the aflaston to help identify a ship. Above the oarsmen was the main deck, an open platform running nearly the entire length of the ship. This was the working area where sailors handled the sails and rigging. It also provided space for Marines and officers. During combat, the deck served as an elevated fighting position, allowing Marines to shoot arrows at enemy ships and engage enemy crews during boarding actions. At the bow, there was a large crossbeam projecting from either side of the ship. Suspended from this crossbeam on each side was an anchor. These anchors were typically made with an iron shank and a lead stock. At the stern was a wooden seat reserved for the commanding officer, known as the triarch. Forward of this seat stood the helmsman, or Kybernetes, on a recessed platform sitting just below the deck. The helmsman controlled the ship's heading through two long wooden levers, or tillers, each connected to a large rudder mounted on either side of the stern. The ship's agility depended heavily on the helmsman's skill and coordination with the oarsmen. The center line of the main deck was left open, with stairs leading down to a central gangway below. This gangway ran from bow to stern and provided access to the oarsmen's stations below deck. Inside the hull, the oarsmen sat on small wooden seats, packed tightly together in 3 tiers running fore and aft. These 3 tiers were offset side to side at staggered heights, so each rower was positioned slightly inboard of the one above. This minimized the length of the hull while maximizing rowing power. 62 oarsmen sat on the upper level, with their oars supported on outriggers extending beyond the top edge of the hull. 54 oarsmen sat on each of the middle and lower levels, with their oars emerging through openings in the hull. The lower level oar openings were sealed using flexible leather sleeves, which reduced water intrusion while still allowing the oars to pivot freely. Each oar was about 4 meters long, positioned forward of a thole pin, and secured to it by a leather oar loop. Oars were used during combat, in calm or unfavorable winds, and whenever precise maneuvering was required. The oar blades were only about 30 centimeters apart in the water, which made synchronization essential to prevent collisions. That rhythm was maintained by the aulites, a musician who played the aulos, a double-piped reed instrument that provided a steady cadence for the crew. He would most likely have been located amidships, so the sound could carry to both ends of the vessel. The rowing master, or kaloustes, shouted commands, maintained discipline, and reinforced the rowing rhythm verbally. He likely walked along the gangway because his voice couldn't easily carry to both ends of the ship from amidships. Together, this system made triremes exceptionally fast and maneuverable for their size. Sea trials of the reconstructed trireme Olympias demonstrated that the ship could make a 90-degree turn in about 35 seconds and a 180-degree turn in a little over a minute within roughly 2 ship lengths. It could reach a flat-out top speed of up to 9 knots and accelerate from a standstill to 7 knots in about 30 seconds. Every part of the trireme had a purpose, which inspired us to create this trireme poster, mapping out its every detail. Grab yours through the link in the description. We're also giving one away. For a chance to win one, like this video, subscribe, and comment below. What surprised you most about the trireme? We'll announce the winner in the next video. And a quick shout out to our last giveaway winner. Congratulations! Its construction differed from modern practice. Triremes were built using the shell-first method, meaning the outer shell was constructed first, and the ribs and internal framework were fitted afterwards. Fir, pine, and cedar were the primary timbers used, depending on the region of construction. The shell was held together by planks joined edge to edge using approximately 20,000 mortise and tenon joints. Slots were cut into the edge of each plank, hardwood tenons were inserted, then holes were drilled through the planking and tenon. Wooden pegs were then driven through to lock everything in place. To increase the rigidity of the hull, a large hemp rope called the hypozoma was tensioned beneath the deck from bow to stern, helping prevent hogging, the upward bending of the hull. This rope was likely tensioned using a block and tackle system. The hypozoma also braced the structure against the stresses of ramming, and it was considered so important that triremes were unable to fight or even go to sea at all without it. Triremes were not intended to remain in the water for extended periods, as their wooden hulls could become waterlogged and infested with shipworm. To prevent this, they were hauled ashore into large, purpose-built ship sheds when not in use, which also protected them from the sun. These impressive complexes could house dozens of triremes side by side. If you'd like to learn more about how they were built and operated, we've put together a members-only video exploring these remarkable structures in greater detail. Now that we've seen how the trireme was built, the next question is how it was actually used, because in battle, the ship's power came down to speed and timing. Ramming was the primary method of disabling enemy ships, and the preferred target was the stern, because it offered the best chance of success. Ramming an opponent's flank was less effective for two reasons. First, the mass of oars projecting from the side of the target ship could cushion the impact. Second, even if the ram penetrated the hull, the target ship's motion could tear the ram from the attacker's bow, leaving it crippled and vulnerable. The stern, by contrast, had small areas on either side that were clear of oars. This allowed for a cleaner strike, with far less risk of losing the ram if the attacker approached at the correct angle. The trireme required a highly skilled crew to successfully ram an enemy vessel and then quickly disengage before the damaged ship swamped. Because these ships were made of wood and carried no cargo, they did not normally sink even after being rammed. After a successful ramming attack, a disabled enemy vessel could then be boarded and captured by Marines on board. Greek fleets typically sailed in columns, with one ship following behind another. But upon sighting the enemy, they formed one or more lines, with ships positioned side by side and facing the opposing fleet. This abreast formation allowed each ship's ram to be brought directly against the enemy, while also protecting the vulnerable sides and sterns of their own vessels. One of the most effective maneuvers for breaking the enemy line was the Deconstructed. In this tactic, triremes rode through gaps in the enemy formation, then turned to attack the exposed sterns of opposing ships. If the enemy line was too tightly packed to execute a Deconstructed, the Periplus manner could be used instead. In this maneuver, triremes sailed around the enemy line to attack from the side or rear. Success depended heavily on superior speed and maneuverability. To defend against such maneuvers, fleets could form a quay-close, a circular formation with ships arranged in a ring and their rams facing outward, protecting their vulnerable sides and sterns. The trireme was not the largest warship of the ancient world. During the 4th century BC, larger vessels such as the quadrireme and quinquireme appeared, followed by even larger ships. Even so, the trireme continued to be used alongside larger warships for at least 5 centuries after that. But unlike the trireme, little is known about these later ships, and the exact arrangement of their rowers remains uncertain. Most historians believe that, like the trireme, they did not exceed 3 tiers of oars. Instead, they likely increased the number of men assigned to each oar. Quinquiremes were used extensively by the Romans starting in the 3rd century BC. They could reach lengths of up to 45 meters, with 300 rowers below deck and 120 Marines on deck. These larger warships shifted naval tactics away from pure ramming and toward boarding actions. Their greater size allowed them to carry features such as wooden fighting towers, which provided elevated firing positions for archers. They could also carry naval boarding bridges such as the corvus, which was equipped with an iron hook at the far end designed to attach itself to an enemy ship. And later, they could carry artillery pieces such as the ballista, an ancient ranged weapon that launched either bolts or stones at an enemy. But the versions mounted on ships were only a small version of the weapon. On land, ballistae could become far larger, more powerful, and built to break fortifications from a distance. To see how the ballista and other ancient siege weapons worked, check out our video on siege weapons. Thanks for watching. Stay curious.